This is Darren Gray, All-Pro Dad Leader. You're listening to Success is a Choice podcast. Make it a great day.
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we are talking with Dan Wood. Since 2000, Dan has been the executive director of the National Christian College Athletic Association. During his career, he has been a coach, athletic director, and professor. He has earned National Coach of the Year honors in 2 different sports, men's soccer and men's golf. He has also been inducted into the Hall of Fame at 2 different schools, Southern Wesleyan University and Oklahoma Wesleyan University. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jamie. Great to be with you.
Well, you are the executive director of the National Christian College Athletic Association. For those listeners that may not be as familiar with what the NCCAA does, give us a snapshot of the great opportunities that you guys provide for student athletes and even in the communities.
Sometimes we have to answer that question by telling folks who we are not. We're not the Christian arm of the NCAA, which I've been asked before. But we serve about 100 institutions a year. We do 24 national championships. We do 1 bowl game. Our schools are all Christ-centered institutions who really, they're joining us for mission fitness, but most of them are duly affiliated with the NAIA, the NCAA 2, or the NCAA 3. There's about 30 of those schools that are not. They're NCCAA only, and we do regional championships, national championships. We have 200 pages of compliance and minutia eligibility detail. We do All-American teams, scholar athletes, national convention. But everything we do is targeted to serving the Great Commission of Christ, and that includes partnering in summer and spring break mission trips and things of that nature with our member schools.
Well, and you have 2 divisions, and you have some larger schools in the NCCAA. Like you said, they're not just all Bible colleges. You have a lot to offer depending on what the athletic ability is for some of the players and what people are looking for in a school. And in fact, we had one of your member institutions' athletic directors from Grace University. We had Chad Briscoe on the show earlier, and they're, like you said, dual affiliated as well.
Yeah, what you'll see is a lot of our schools in their primary affiliation, and that's what we call it. We understand that if they're NCAA 2, that's their primary affiliation. If they're NAIA, that's probably their primary affiliation. But in a lot of cases, they're not always competitive. They may not be fully funded relative to athletic scholarshiping. So they may not have as much success in that conference or national affiliation. So we're another postseason opportunity for them. Many of our coaches have built great programs in the NCAA 2 or the NAIA through NCCAA postseason success. Because at the end of the day, if you're still playing, for example, last week, soccer at a high level for a national championship within NCCAA, that's going to bode those teams well that made it to our Final Four and then went on to win the national title. Should they make NAIA next year, they will be used to the national stage, so to speak.
Well, and in some cases, like you mentioned last week, and we're taping this in early December, but last week you had the soccer tournament. And for instance, Indiana Wesleyan University's women's soccer team was nationally ranked in the NAIA, but got upset in their conference tournament. And so they ended up not making the NAIA national tournament, even though they were nationally ranked going into that conference tournament. And so you're getting teams that are nationally ranked in some cases or very good in some cases. You've also gotten teams in the past that are making a transition, maybe from Division II to Division I or from NAIA to Division II, and they're not eligible to play in those tournaments.
Correct. I'll give you a great example. I mean, we do our golf championships, Jamie, in the fall, and we do that because the conflict after graduation in May to keep student athletes around for nationals was just too great. So we were losing our best golf programs to the NAIA or the NCAA 2 or the NCAA 3 nationals because they're all in that same 3rd to 4th week of May. And schools, it's hard to keep teams around. If they don't make it out of one regional, then do they play in NCCAA, et cetera. So about 15 years ago, our Golf Coaches Association asked for an exception to their season, so we play in the fall. I say this past fall, we had 4 teams at our women's national championship, 2 in our men's that were NCAA 2 top 20, 1 that was NCAA 2 national runner-up last year in Dallas Baptist University. So the play is very high, better than most people would probably expect. The beauty of it also is we have teams play each other that would never see each other otherwise. Our national finals last week, you mentioned Indiana Wesleyan in our soccer here in December, played Biola University, an NCAA 2 transitional school. They will be fully vested in NCAA 2 in 2 more years, so they would not see them otherwise. So they get to see some different competition, but it's going to be at a higher level once you get to our nationals.
Well, not only do you have a fairly high level of play athletically at the national tournaments, but you also balance that with some other things, some character training, some character emphasis, and some community service emphasis. Talk a little bit about what you could do at the national tournaments.
At all of our regional and national tournaments, and it's kind of like it kind of escalates. Regionals would be at one level, nationals would be at a higher level. We do what we call CSPs, Christian Service Projects. We do not care if the host community spins that off as community service. We're okay with that. It all branches out of our Game Plan for Life character initiative, which is 4 character traits of Christ that we promote, Jamy. It's love, integrity, faith, and excellence. And we believe when we're in Marion, Indiana, or Winona Lake, or Phoenix, Arizona, or St. Augustine, Florida, with a national championship or a regional event, we've got a lot of hands and feet coming into town in these student athletes and coaches. What impact could we make for the kingdom in that town? It may be collecting food. It may be going to a senior citizen center and dancing with them during recreation time. It may be doing a sports clinic, whatever. Whatever's needed is we have our local host tell us what's the best service thing we could do for 2 hours. And give you an idea, again, in these fall championships that we just completed, in Florida, we had over 1,200 hours of Christian service given to Osceola County and Kissimmee, Florida area last week. That's powerful. That's one of the reasons they bid to bring us back, is it's not just that we're there to compete and put some money into the economy. There's residue left, positive impact. And so we just think that's an important thing to teach young people and even our coaches during that, what is normally a very focused championship mindset, that what was important in August when they were doing spiritual development with their teams and everything, it's still important in December or in May at the Baseball World Series or in March during our March Madness. It's still the number one thing is what are we teaching our young people?
Well, and there's plenty of college opportunities out there for students to attend, and all of your schools share pretty much a common mission or a common focus. Now, they might be different denominations or slightly different in some of the specifics, but ultimately they share a focus on Christian higher education. Why is there still a need for Christian higher ed in athletic programs, and what's the benefits of if a student is looking at going to college of considering a Christian higher education?
I think the general answer is that we live in a culture that's where we see a deteriorating values system, or at least it's being redefined and typically not toward a biblical or a Christian take. And so because of that, the opportunity to have integration of Christian thought and Christian training into every discipline, business, science, mathematics, education, the ministry, drama, accounting, whatever, it's needed in our culture, even if we have a culture sometimes, Jamy, that's not asking for it. We need those in there. And the beauty of it is that inside that Christian higher education, the utilization of sport, but since sport really kind of is the great trifecta today, in my opinion, between technology, entertainment and music, and then sport, that gets people's attention. We only have, 100 ESPN channels, for example. We have a channel that's just for golf. So those things are still appealing. So when our schools can use those to, A, attract students, B, teach students and train them as well as let them use those skill sets, there's still a great need out there for Christian higher ed. And I think you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of playing opportunities for really good athletes who may not make it on the Division I level or the big time, whatever they want to call it. There's a lot of great opportunities to play. And not just play, but play at a high level. And in some cases, play professionally. We'll have 25 to 30 student athletes graduate from NCCAA schools annually that play professionally in some sport for some time, some long-term, some shorter term.
You know, Dan, we had a podcast guest, Jonathan Milligan, in episode 33, who was a basketball player in high school and got hurt. And he was telling us about how he lost out on some scholarship opportunities because he got hurt, but he was able to find a really good Christian college in the NCCAA that he was a fit for. And, you know, even though he was a good athlete, he got hurt, and that was kind of an option for him. So the NCAA is also an option for people that get hurt and maybe lose out on some scholarship opportunities as well. You're celebrating your 50th anniversary with the NCCAA as an organization. You're going to be hosting your first ever President's Summit in May of 2008. Talk a little bit about how this came about, why you're going to do this, and what the opportunities are going forward for the NCCAA.
The celebration of the 50th anniversary is just exciting. I won't bore you with the details, but my statement is God has a great sense of humor for the NCCAA to have made it for 50 years. It's very unique in the way He's sewn that together. At the same time, we have probably erred in our history a little, Jamy, of going through the gym door historically or the athletic facility when we get to a campus, when the reality is we're dealing with Christian higher education. We're dealing with higher education, and it all now dovetails together with compliance and issues within culture, within education, Title IX issues, gender identification, equity issues, all these things. They involve the presidents now more than ever. And so we need to get to the CEO, so to speak. So that led to the President's Summit, and we're excited to have an opportunity with them to celebrate 50 years, but also to have some very candid discussion of what's next. What's next for the next 5 years, 10 years, and as best we can foresee, the next 20 years, relative to what should the NCCAA be. As long as we stay true to our mission, what are the new endeavors? What are some new strategies? How do we better work together? And we need to bring that in at the highest level. So we're very, very excited about that opportunity.
We'll return to our interview with Dan Wood shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to mention something that goes hand in hand with what Dan is doing with the NCCAA. He is passionate about developing students and building up their character. You know, Frederick Douglass once said that it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Well, we've put together a book that helps student athletes learn how to be better leaders and positive teammates. It's called The Leadership Playbook, Become Your Team's Most Valuable Leader. You see, when we help develop today's students, we can also help influence the future. So please visit theleadershipplaybook.com to learn more about this impactful book. And now back to more insights from Dan Wood. Well, you have had a long and distinguished career, both as a coach and as an administrator. What are some of the things that stand out to you most, that you're kind of most proud of as you look back on your career so far?
I would say probably for me would be that the fact that I've been so blessed despite me. I knew I was called to coach. I knew I was passionate about coaching from an 8th grade basketball coach who inspired me. And then on to my college coach and athletic director, Dr. Clyde Keith Connor at Southern Wesleyan University, who next to my dad's the most influential male in my life. So that's probably what stands out. I'm just a blessed person. I'm better than I deserve, all those cliches. Most proud of probably that I married up. I married my wife, Kelly. We've been married 32 years, dated for almost 4 years. We have 2 wonderful kids who love the Lord, and one is the wife to a sergeant in the military. Our son graduates from Southern Wesleyan this fall. So those are probably the things. I think that, some overcoming things or things that if I go to a human level and say, what did I do that was maybe odd or good in some ways? Lost an eye at age 24 when I wanted to be a professional golfer. trying to get through Q school or have that dream, and that derailed that, and yet it created a chapel talk, Jamy, that I use called "I Lost an Eye, and for the first time I could see," because that's exactly what happened. I think is spiritually, maturity, and then I think also that having God kind of take care of us and being able to be, I guess they call us cancer survivors after a diagnosis of what was supposedly stage 4 terminal cancer in 2015, and yet we're still here in December of 17. So just a blessed man.
Those are pretty big challenges to overcome, losing an eye and cancer. That's quite a story.
Well, it was really, it's ironic. When I was 12, my sisters remind me that I made a statement when we had a Vietnam vet come back to our hometown in North Carolina, and he had lost a leg. And I remember somehow we started talking about if you could choose, and I jokingly said, I think if I was going to lose anything, I'd be okay with one eye. That'd be okay. And I kind of chuckled, to be honest, now that I look back on that. Jamy, that's exactly what ended up happening. I don't think I was foreshadowing. I think it's just the way life played out. But it was a life-changing moment. I grew up in a home where Christ was preeminent. I knew that, grew up in the church, but I never owned it, even through Christian college education. Made a commitment to Christ, but never honored it, to be very candid. And it was in those quiet moments, having to stay on my back and not put pressure on the eye after the accident, that God kind of helped me come to grips with, what are you going to do with me? Not your parents, not your grandparents, not your heritage. What are you going to do with my son, Christ? And it was a turning point. It led to Kelly and I getting married. We were going to get married, but I wasn't going to be much of a husband the way I was, a selfish PGA pro wannabe. And so it changed dramatically, I think, our path, even to this day. Because we've worked together. Many people may not know that or understand. We've worked together now for over 17 years here in NCCAA together. I didn't hire her. She didn't hire me. She was already on staff when the board approached me, but it's been a phenomenal blessing. I don't think that happens without that turning point in the road for me.
How did you injure your eye?
It was a golf shot. A former college teammate of mine. We were playing. It was December, getting ready for next qualifying. And he literally hit what players would call a shank. Came dead right into the left eye, kind of exploded it, and that was the end of that. And I will tell you, in a short story, I had more fun with it than you can imagine. It has shown up in many people's iced tea down here in the South. It has shown up on the foreheads of both of our children in delivery room. It's been in people's salsa. It's been used for many a prank. I've marked many a golf ball with donors and outings and events, and so we've had plenty of fun with it. I'm not sure what I would have done without it. Okay.
You got me speechless on that one.
Let me put it this way, Jamy. I always tell people I'll keep an eye out for you, so just remember that.
That's one of the better stories I've heard. Well done, well played. Now, you mentioned that you've worked with your wife for a long time. For those listeners out there that might have to work with their spouse, do you have any tips?
Well, the number one is what she told me when I took this job. You just remember who's the boss at the house and now at the office, too. And I've remembered that well. It's a great partnership. She was my best friend. That helps. But I think part of it for us, we are very blessed. And again, Jamy, I'd love to say we're really wise and we plan this. We live about 30 minutes from where we work. We live near family. That's why we bought the home we bought, because of location near all of our other family that was in this area. But what has been built into that is she typically goes home at 3:30 or 3:30, and I go home 5:30. So we don't necessarily always ride together. In fact, rarely do we. And that 30-minute break for me at the end of the day, where maybe I, as the CEO, there was something we didn't agree on, or there was tension in our employer-employee relationship. To be very candid, I can dispatch of that. She can dispatch of that somewhere in that 30-minute drive, and it just has not gone into our home. And we have been blessed there. God saw that ahead of us. There's no doubt. We love working together. We are passionate about using sports for Christ, so it just seems natural for us. She's probably our best employee. She knows this association. She worked in the national office when it was in Marion, Indiana, from 1987 to 1992 when I was coaching at Indiana Wesleyan. So she is actually the longest tenured employee in the history of the NCCAA. She's entering year 26. So it really has not been a major struggle for us. Tough on our kids sometimes when we both have to travel for business together. But again, we've got a lot of family nearby, so even when they were young, that was covered.
As you look back on your career as well and some of the success you've had and how you've helped, for instance, the NCCAA move forward and progress, what are some of the factors or habits or qualities that you think that has helped you in developing, that success in your programs and in your organizations?
I'd like to think a sense of humor. I think it's critical, to be very candid. I think a pursuit of relationship with God first above everything. Back to even talking about Kelly and I, we both made commitments early that we were not each other's life. Christ was our life, and we were secondary, and then came our family, etc. So I think that pursuit daily, Jamy, has been critical, because at the end of each day, I have one measuring stick. My goal every night when I lay my head down on the pillow is to answer to my Lord, hey, did I do well in your eyes today? That applies to the work task, the checklist, the punch list, the tough phone calls, the decision making, the financial crunch times when you have to deal with that. So, but I think a sense of humor is critical to being successful in anything. I really do, and especially the ability to laugh at oneself. If you don't have that, I really don't know how you'll be successful long term. Ability to problem solve, that was ingrained in us growing up. I seem to have the ability to solve problems quickly on the fly, even if we have 20 seconds to make a decision, or it's something we need to do in a quick print job, or even where a gap has been placed and we've got to overcome a bad decision that was already made. That's been helpful. And I think the other thing, and Jamy, I think the whole idea of your whole podcast on success would be targeted to this. I've been blessed with incredible teachers and mentors, and I take notes, not only mentally and visually, but I write them down. I've got a notebook of notes from people all the way back to Jerry Knox in the 8th grade, that junior high basketball coach, to my dad, to my mom, to Keith Connor, to my wife. She's one of my greatest teachers in the world. So I think those are probably, there's all kinds of traits and things, but those are probably the ones I would rank at the top.
So what kinds of things are you doing right now to ensure that you grow and develop as the leader that you need to be? Because you're always giving, you're always putting forth ideas, you're helping others in your role. So how do you kind of fill your tank up? I am trying to learn to kind of that busy doesn't equal building. I want to build into NCCAA. I want to build into our family, my marriage, my relationship with Christ. And sometimes we can be very busy and feel like we're so productive, and then at the end of the day, we back away and we're not. So I'm trying to really remember that it's kind of a trait from the greatest human coach who ever lived, in my opinion, John Wooden, and I know you're familiar with it, but be quick, but don't hurry. And understanding the difference in those sometimes is critical for me, because I am one who can get very busy. I love multitasking, and yet when we think we're a good multitasker, what we fail to see is I did a lot in a short time. Great, thumbs up. I didn't do any of it as well as I could have had I been better organized and thought that process out. I'm trying to remember, I think, before we even got on air, what my dad taught me. I have one mouth and two ears. Need to be a better listener and hearer. Probably good sometimes at hearing the sound and not listening to the what's been said and taking that. So I'm trying some intentional practices, better eye contact, shutting off my phone when I, not even having it in the room, and we're attached to these digital devices. I've kind of also learned, to be honest, to let staff fail when it's not life and death. It's okay. A lot of them do stuff. They're creative. We hire people who can think on their own, and so let them fail on things that aren't monumental. If that's okay, because from that,
we've all heard some of my greatest lessons learned were through failures. And so let them do that. Let them think and be successful on their own, and also let them fail on their own, and that's okay.
Are there any podcasts or books that you're currently consuming or that you'd recommend to our audience?
Number one would be anything from the author Mark Batterson. I don't know if he is well known to all. He's actually a former NCCAA student athlete, played basketball at Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, which has since closed. Now he's the pastor of National City Church in Washington, D.C., huge monolithic church we would call, but just a phenomenal communicator, writer. And I am actually rereading for the third time and really slowing down and taking it in, a book called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. Long title, phenomenal book. I would challenge all your listeners to check it out. But he's a great writer. Another book called Circle Maker, which is on the practice of really specific targeted prayer, which has been good. And then I'm a new fan of a guy named Hort Schultz. We're actually going to have him as part of that President's Summit. He is a customer service guru. Just phenomenal. Strong believer. He attends Andy Stanley's church down in Atlanta, but he was the CEO of Ritz-Carlton and really flipped the whole brand, probably saved the brand, to be very candid, of Ritz-Carlton, but used for him what he would call biblical principles. He couldn't sell them that way in Ritz-Carlton, but that's what he used, and it's on serving and giving to the customer, even at the highest end of the hotel industry. So those are probably a couple of the current ones.
Is there somebody that you would like to meet or get to know that you don't currently know?
Yeah, I think, when I use the word know, in other words, I know of them, they don't know of me, I've never met them. I have been a major fan of Tony Dungy. I briefly passed by one of my former golfers at IWU, was his pro at Hillcrest Country Club in Indianapolis, and got to just briefly meet Coach Dungy once, but just in following him, I don't think I've seen a consistent level of humility in an elite sports figure like I've seen in him over the last 15 years. And it just seems to be there. Every Sunday night when I watch football, he just seems to be a humble man. And so I'd love to do time with him. Colin Powell has always excited me as just the military leader that he is, but the thinker that he is, the service to our country in politics, out of politics. So he's one. And the other one is a golfer. I think he's the greatest golfer that ever lived. I'd love to spend time with Jack Nicklaus. I met him briefly trying to compete against one of his sons years ago in the North-South Amateur. But that's because he was pulling for his son, and I saw him there. That was about our contact point. That is
a great list. I would agree with you on all of those. A well put together list there. What is a purchase of $100 or less that's had a profound impact on your life?
This may catch some people off guard, but it's a $79 guitar by a online guitar teacher called Esteban. I don't play guitar. I never have, probably never will. But our son desperately wanted one at around age 12. And so I gave in, and I got him one. And it came with a CD and books and all this stuff. And our son took that guitar and never really used the books, looked at the CD, but taught himself to play guitar. Now, why is that purchase profound? Because our son will graduate this May, Lord willing, as a Christian worship arts major. 3 years leading the chapel and praise band at the Christian college he attends. He is a worship leader at our church with our youth. And I have watched that guitar kind of help create his passion. And that's had a profound effect on our home. Just watching him lead his own mom and dad in spiritual development, watching him lead his mom and dad. And we would be downstairs, Jamy, watching TV and just mute it because he would be upstairs writing a new song. And to get the early preview before his friends got it or our church got it, it's probably one of the greatest things I've ever bought, not for myself per se, but for anybody in our family. And I think it's changed the trajectory of our son's life for Christ, which is profound and priority one for us.
Did you ever pick up the guitar when he was gone and try playing it?
I did. Actually, we were blessed. Spoke at an event that just completely forgot the name of the group. Shame on me. But anyway, maybe it'll come back to me. But Audio Adrenaline led the worship set at this event. I then spoke. They played more. And through conversation, they actually ended up auctioning off the guitar of one of their lead singers. And I was fortunate enough to get it very cheap and brought that as a gift. That one I did end up picking up a few months after it was in our house. And I thought, let me just see. Here's what I found, Jamie. That guitar is awesome, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, it doesn't sound good at all. So I don't care who had played it; it wasn't going to work for me. So I tinkered with it, but no, that's not my skill set currently.
Where can people connect with you or learn more about you or the NCCAA?
I'll direct them more to the NCCAA. I don't know that there's a ton about Dan, but NCCAA is at the NCCAA for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Website is theNCCAA.org. Put that first C in there, or you won't end up anywhere, I don't think, currently. But those are probably our main points. Is there
a favorite quote that you have, or any parting bit of wisdom you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, there's a dear friend of mine, Bobby Temple. He was the retirement fund director for the Wesleyan Church down in Indianapolis years ago. Jamy, he was also a great golfer at University of Mississippi. We were dear friends. Dave Ramsey claims this phrase. It's not his. Bobby Temple taught it to him in 1984. But I'm always better than I deserve. And that's not trite. It's not a cliche. It's just true. It's true because of Christ. But even when I inventory my life, I am one man who is significantly better than I deserve in every aspect.
Great words of insight today, wisdom. I appreciate your time. And if anyone out there is listening and has a son or a daughter that's looking to go to a college, maybe to play sports or just to go to college in general, definitely suggest you checking out their website at theNCCAA.org, and maybe you'll find a school that fits your son or daughter. So, Dan, thanks so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Been a delight to be with you.
I appreciate Dan being on the show. And once again, I want to recommend that if you have a son or a daughter who's interested in playing college sports and would also like a Christian setting, check out theNCCAA.org. That's www.theNCCAA.org to find out more about the National Christian College Athletic Association and the opportunities available for student athletes. Thanks so much for listening today, and please take just a quick second to hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today? Choice will you make today?